Within our wheel of development in climbing, we have mental abilities, physical abilities, and technical abilities. And within those three categories, you can choose to develop skill to bolster your ability to climb in any given style or terrain. Here we're talking about developing technical skills and the drills that we use, the most popular drills that we use with our athletes to develop specific skill facets. So when we start out asking athletes to work on skill development, really what we want to do is start with positioning-based drills, which are going to be learning how to use your body and move your body into the most efficient positions on stone, both for economy, so like utilizing energy or conserving energy, and safety, things like clipping stances or being able to rest in specific positions the best. The positioning drills that we use or that you can develop are going to incorporate things like footwork and hip positions. You're going to incorporate things like body tension and balance, and you might even incorporate things like flexibility. What's really important to remember is that these aren't necessarily strict, discrete categories, and so there is going to be overlap between positioning drills, movement drills, and momentum drills, and they kind of build off of each other in a cyclical way. So there will be a lot of overlap in terms of skill and drill development. So when we're looking at building out a drill session or engaging with the drill session, so to speak, there are some parameters that you want to follow and some specifics in terms of being able to progress or regress what it is that you're actually doing. So the first few things we want to think about are: how long do you do the session? Or how long do you engage with skill development within a bouldering session or a rope climbing session in general? Typically, we're looking at about 20 to 30 minutes total. Around that time, you're looking at technical movement degradation and fatigue setting in. And so those are definitely going to be your markers for when to stop working on drills. You give yourself this time frame of 20 to 30 minutes. But if you're seeing before that time your movement quality breaking down, so like that might be like your feet skating all over the place or your eyes are darting from one point to the other, you feel sporadic in your movement, that would be a good time and good indicator to stop. Or if you feel like you're having fatigue set in, we want to make sure that masterful movement is really the focus of what we're doing when we're doing drill work. So those are the two main factors for placing in drill work within any kind of session that you have during a week. And then we want to think about four main specific aspects to developing drills and skills. The first one is we want it to be measurable for everybody so that you can mark progress down or mark regression down and then adjust accordingly. And so measuring drills or skill development is going to be anything from the height of your high step in inches, or the number of good technical foot movements that you've done per session, or the number of reps of any given drill that you've done within a session, as you track that over the length of a cycle, and so you can understand how many touches to that drill you've had over any given amount of time. The second piece is going to be making sure that it's manageable. If you can't do the baseline drill, for example, if we're talking about like a power bouldering section of a session, trying to develop the skill of moving explosively and fast, if you can't link together 3, 4, 5, 6 powerful movements in a row, then likelihood is that we need to regress that drill itself. And so what do you do to make that session manageable? Well, you can reduce the number of repetitions that you do in a row. So instead of doing an entire boulder problem to develop specific power, you might only do half that boulder, or you might just link 1 or 2 moves together at a time. And you go back to tracking and you say like, okay, I'm starting to be able to do 2, 3 power movements in a row. I can see that my capacity to deal with this drill is improving. So within that regression of any given drill, you're looking at slowing the movement down, shortening the amount of repetitions that you do, reducing the complexity of the movement. So you might take it from a steep angle to a less steep angle or more vertical angles. Or counterintuitively, you might do the drill more frequently, less given time during the session itself. So if I'm having a hard time with power development, instead of spending 20 or 30 minutes trying to work on being explosive, I might reduce that to 5 or 10 minutes per session, but do that session 3-4 times during a week. And slowly you'll start to see some progression there, and so you can shorten that frequency time frame and increase the duration of the session itself. Conversely, if the drill is too easy, then we need to progress it. We always want to make sure that we're working kind of against ourselves, pushing ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone. And so to progress drill sessions, we want to be able to increase the complexity of it or put more demand on ourselves. And so that might look like increasing the angle, making the angle steep. You might make holds smaller, both hand holds and foot holds. You might make the distance between those holds farther. You might increase the amount of repetitions that you're doing within any given drill session, or you might reduce the frequency that you're touching that throughout a week or a cycle. We really want to make sure that people aren't focusing on too much at a time. So we really like athletes to spend maybe 1 to 2 months at a time working on 1 to 2 skills at a time, which doesn't seem like a lot of skill development. You want to, like, intuitively, you might think to pack a bunch of skill development in at one time, so you might develop faster. But if we look at this as a habitual framework, if you're working on 1 to 2 skills per month, that over time really develops a whole athlete and a better climber, and you have a better ability to judge whether or not you're improving on those skills over time. The third thing that you want to pay attention to with drill development is thinking masterfully focused. And what we mean by that is, what are you going to pay attention to that keeps you intent on what you're doing? And so if I'm having an athlete work on footwork skills, I'm going to ask them to focus on some very specific things so that we're not just looking at footwork globally. And so that might be like, I want you to pay attention to the way that your eyes focus on your feet and track how often you lose your attention away from your feet. And I also want you to try to grab the foothold with your toes when you step on each individual foothold. So you want to be really specific in what you're asking yourself or your athletes to do when they're engaging with any kind of drills within a total session. And then the last thing seems very basic and intuitive, but often misplaced or not done, which is actually plan for the drills within your individual session. And so make sure that you're scheduling it within your training so that you can actually do it, or that you can reflect back on your training in and of itself and say, oh, I keep skipping this drill session. Why am I doing that? And where else could I place it so that I do address drill development? The Rest Anywhere session is a positioning drill that was adapted from Jerry Moffatt. It's something that he did back in the day to develop his ability to be comfortable in any resting position for competition and to be able to recover in those positions. And while that is an adequate way of developing endurance and recovery, we really believe that it's better at developing your ability to be comfortable in challenging positions and reduce an anxiety state on the wall in that way. And so this is one of those kind of crossover sessions where we're looking at movement-based work and positioning all at the same time. The goal of the session is to traverse left and right, up and down, maybe on a spray wall. You can also do this individually or with a partner. But what you're going to want to do is have a specific amount of time frame that you are moving on open holds on the wall in not a specific pattern. And then at some point, if you're alone, set a timer to go off maybe like every 15, 20, 30 seconds. And whenever that timer goes off, whatever footholds and handholds you're on are the position that you're going to rest in. And while this might be challenging, what we're really trying to do is, again, build an awareness of how to work yourself into better positions for resting, better positions for clipping, because often when we're outside, we're not always given a giant jug to rest on or given huge feet to rest on. Same can be said for clipping positions. Oftentimes we struggle with finding good clipping positions, and so this can be a really good transfer of ability there. Like I said, you can also do this with a partner, which actually creates a little bit of a better variability. And so the partner can be watching you climb and reach out at an undisclosed time and tell you to stop. And again, whatever position you end up in, footholds and handholds are the position that you're gonna stay in. And we start out with like a 15 to 30 second resting time frame to really allow you to settle into the position, find good hip position, find the way that you can really stand on your feet and maybe reduce a little bit of the weight that's on your hands and get used to that. And then once that time frame is up, you continue on with your climbing and maybe repeat that for about 3 to 5 minutes at a time. So that 3 to 5 minute segment is going to be your set. Your rest times between those sets should be at least double the amount of time that you were climbing. If you're working with a partner, they can go ahead and do their set while you help them. And then within a total session, we might be looking to do anywhere from 3 to 6 sets altogether. The diagonal drill is a crossbody tension drill, so positioning typically on steep wall, but we can regress this to being on like slightly overhanging terrain. First seen prominently seen with Mercedes Pallmeyer. She does a really good job of describing how this drill works, and we've adopted it for ourselves, and thank her for that. But really what we were trying to do with this drill is develop both your body's strength from toe to fingers in creating this crossbody tension or strength across your body in challenging positions, and teaching the athlete to understand that you can be strong and move well off of 2 points of contact, not always trying to have all 4 points of contact on the wall at all times. And so the way that this drill works is it's a static movement drill. There's no moving involved except for the working arm. And so you're gonna start off in maybe like a 35 or 40 degree angled wall on big holds. And you're looking for footholds and handholds that are about the distance between your elbow and your knee apart. And so this will take some kind of variability depending on the size of your body, depending on the strength that you have. But let's just start with the aspect of putting your left foot on a fairly large edge at about knee height, and then grabbing an open handhold or a jug with your right hand at about shoulder height. And so this effectively creates this line between your right hand and your left foot. And we're gonna work in 3 different positions and hold those 3 different positions for about 5 seconds each. And so the object is to then pull onto the wall with those 2 points of contact, holding at a straight locked out arm, strong like packed shoulder for 5 seconds. And then you'll pull onto the wall with the other hand, pulling your body into a 90-degree lock off at that working elbow. You'll hold that position for 5 seconds. And then you'll pull on one more time and hold a full lock off up against the wall for an additional 5 seconds and then come off the wall. The goal here is then to maybe rest for like 30 seconds or a minute and then repeat that on the opposite side. So your right foot would be working and your left hand would be working, and that would be 1 set. And within a session, you want to maybe rest 3 to 5 minutes between sets and probably complete 3 to 5 sets within a session. Now, if you're having a hard time with the durations of being on the wall for that amount of time, you can reduce the time frame to about 3 seconds per hang, or you can come off the wall in between your straight arm 90-degree lock off and full lock off and rest individually there. You can also reduce the angle that you're doing this exercise on to make it a little bit easier. The banded climber is a positioning drill that is emphasizing the importance of hip positioning and the consequences of not having your hips close into the wall or over your feet while you're climbing. This is going to be a drill that requires you to have a partner. It's really good to be able to work back and forth. One person is pulling on the band, they're resting while the other person is climbing. It's going to be best done in a situation where you can be low to the ground and traverse quite a ways back and forth on the wall. And depending on difficulty and desired difficulty, you can do this on a vertical terrain or overhanging terrain. It's best to start on vertical terrain to learn the demands of the drill itself. And so what we do with the banded climber is you're going to get on the wall as the climber with an elastic band around your hips, and your partner is positioned behind you, gently pulling back on the band itself, effectively pulling your hips away from your body and away from the wall. And the job of the climber is to pull your hips back in while simultaneously moving across the wall. And really what we're trying to do is emphasize the use of your big prime movers. So your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your lower body, and your core over just simply trying to pull with your arms. You'll notice if you do this, you're going to end up getting quite fatigued quite fast. So we want to try to push all of the work into our midsection and lower body to keep our hips over our feet and as close to the wall as possible. And what we ask is that people start with anywhere between 5 and 15 moves total per set. And you want to be resting maybe 3 to 5 minutes between sets, looking to do about 3 to 5 sets within a given session.